So yeah, I've always heard this.
Yeah.
Burj Al Murad, the tower that they built a floor a day.
Yeah, there's an advert about this.
How funny.
Yeah, but quite badly built because it's
But
only
like,
like
also
2.5 meters high.
Who wants to live in a rush job? Welcome to a special episode of Quartertones. My name is Mikey Mhenna. We are recording this episode live in our studio in Beirut. And with us is Mayssa Jallad, who is a musician and urban researcher and general friend of afikra.
I am.
It's so nice to have you in the studio. It's been a long time coming, so welcome.
It's so great to be here.
Okay.
I like what you did with the place.
Yeah, it's a nice refurbishment. Okay. So I've always known you as Mayssa from Safar.
Oh.
And I'm excited because we get to talk about your first solo project that I feel like it's been making waves among the music nerds.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious if you can, if you were to describe this project and when it first started, did it start at Columbia when you were doing research on urban planning? Is this connected directly to your work as an urban planner?
This project started as the existential crisis that happens after you write a thesis.
So what was the title of your thesis? Something about...
My thesis was... So I did a master's in historic preservation.
Yeah.
And the thesis was called Beirut's Civil War Hotel District, Preserving the world's first high-rise urban battlefield.
Yeah. These are what people call the sniper wars.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this was the Harb al-Fanadik.
Yeah.
That we all know in our urban mythology
صح.
in Beirut, in Lebanon. But that I kind of decided to study architecturally and try to figure out what it was about these buildings that made them invadable.
Yeah.
What it was about the city's configuration that made history possible in that way, that made the events kind of trickle. And I mean, that's how I approached the thesis.
Yeah.
It started by just in general an interest in some of the buildings, especially the Holiday Inn, actually.
Yeah.
And then turns out that an urban battle was something really interesting to study the preservation of. How do you preserve? How do you keep it for the future? Do you want to keep something like that for the future?
Yeah.
This difficult history.
Did I ever tell you that I went into the Holiday Inn?
Really?
When I was in high school?
Oh, it was still open.
I guess so. I mean, we like my high school history teacher had some connection.
Oh.
And when we were studying the Civil War in high school, like we went up and it was this total insane thing to behold.
Yeah.
What is your relationship like with the Holiday Inn or with Burj Al Murad? Like when you drive around the city, I feel like you must have this weird intimate relationship with these buildings, as if like you dated them 10 years ago and now they're married and have kids, but like you still know intimate things about each other.
I love how you kind of talked about this personification, because this is actually something I've done since I was at university. I've always personified buildings to try to understand them better. I've associated different people to them. When I was in at AUB studying architecture, I likened them to members of my family. So the Holiday Inn was my sister Aya.
You gave them names.
Yes. And to kind of understand how to deal with them in the city, I tried to connect them or compare them to members of my family and different ailments actually in my family. And so that's how I started approaching these buildings when I was at university. And then somehow, as I went and wrote the thesis about this whole hotel district and started knowing even more about these different places. And then I decided I wanted to write music about this battle and about the hotel district.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I was becoming the buildings.
Yeah.
So I was kind of embodying them in order to empathize with them in a way.
Let's say a little bit of the history for somebody who's listening who's never even been to Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about these hotel wars, like just the basic historical reference. What years? Why did this start? Why is this such an important part of the Civil War?
Okay, so I want to start before the war. I want to start in this golden era that we all know in Beirut happened, and kind of the development of the hotel district, which actually started way back before modernity, modern times, when the port of Beirut started expanding. And all of a sudden, the port was starting to be used for touristic purposes. People were visiting the Orient.
Yeah.
And you had these hotels suddenly popping up. And as early as 1930s, the Saint George popped up at the end of that strip.
Yeah.
So these were the kind of the hotels that were built because of the port.
In what later became called like Zaytuna, basically.
Yes. Yeah. So that entire district, and there were so many buildings there that we have no clue about, actually.
Yeah.
So many hotels that your grandpa might tell you about, or like nightclubs.
Yeah, it was a red light district.
It was a red light district, but there were also lots of hotels that are now in present-day Solidaire, and that were actually just destroyed, totally destroyed. And hotels like the Normandie, for example, which is like an iconic hotel. So much happened at the Normandie is now just a regular building with a restaurant that I actually used to go to when I was a teenager. Wow. And then I was like, oh my God.
Which restaurant?
It's called l'Avenue du Parc.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's in the middle of Solidaire.
Yeah,
and actually the sea was right in front of the Normandie hotel, but the Normandie is also where the garbage dump of West Beirut started.
Oh.
And where after that
the
reclaimed land started based on that garbage dump in front of the Normandie hotel.
What we would later describe as Biel.
Biel, yeah.
Interesting.
Biel and the waterfront.
Yeah.
So there was this first wave of port-related hotels. And then the huge golden era of Lebanon happened, and so much money came into Lebanon.
So this is post-World War II, 1950s, 1960s,
yes,
tons
this
of
is
money.
post-Nakba, actually.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if we really think about it, the Nakba and the displacement of Palestinians, and actually the loss of the Arab-Israeli war in Israel when the occupation actually started, a lot of Arab regimes were toppled, and there was a lot of economic instability all around the Arab world. So a lot of the wealthy families of Palestine, Syria, Iraq started pouring into Lebanon.
And all going to Interbank.
Yusuf
Beidas'
So
accounts.
Yusuf Beidas, the incredible Yusuf Beidas, was a Palestinian.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, what happened in the Gulf? They, struck gold. The petrol was kind of brought in so much wealth. All of a sudden, they also started investing in Beirut. And so suddenly, you had so much wealth in Beirut. And the hotel district was born. And the hotel district was born at the same time as well as the airport was born. So you had all these tourists that were coming into this new modern airport of Lebanon. So this is the context, if you want, of luxury investment that started happening in the end of the 40s and 50s and 60s. Meanwhile, the Nakba also brought in the PLO to Lebanon eventually. But at the same time, these investments really didn't go to people. They went to the 1%. And so you had a belt of misery, they called it, at the edge of Beirut. Which is
Literally
all
a
of the
belt of misery?
This is a lot of historians call it that. Samir Qasir calls it that. George Abid calls it that. So it's like a belt of misery surrounding this really wealthy Beirut.
Wow.
So this is the context in which the civil war started, and this is the context in which the battle of the hotels started, and the hotels were invaded.
Okay, so that's the context for the hotel wars, pre-war hotel wars. But so once we get into the civil war, they transform fundamentally.
Yes.
And they turn into battlegrounds.
Yes.
At what point after 1975 does that actually start happening?
So this is October 1975. So the bus of Ayn Ramene happened in April.
Yeah.
So October is 6 months later, right?
Yeah.
And this has started actually after the battles that happened in the souks of Beirut. So the souks of Beirut and the banks of Beirut were pillaged by both militias, by both sides.
Yeah.
And so the next instinct was, okay, let's go to the central bank now and try to pillage that. And it started with the central bank. I'll go ahead and in our conversation, I think I need to preface this. I'll call just as I did in my album, I'll call the left-wing pro-Palestinians the Reds.
Yeah.
And I'll call the right-wing Christian nationalists the Blues.
Okay.
So the Blues head to the central bank, which is in Hamra.
Yeah.
And they kind of go through it slowly, through Kantari and through the Haigazian University.
Where we are right now, basically.
Yes, exactly. And then they try to advance towards the central bank, but it just doesn't work because the Reds have appeared from Hamra.
Yeah.
And they kind of defend the central bank as their own, as part of their own territory.
Okay.
So the Blues are pushed towards Kantari, and there are very fierce battles in Antari at that moment, towards the end of October. And then suddenly one faction of the Reds decides to go kind of rogue, and they invade Burj al Mur, which is a construction site. At the time, it's never, it was never completed. It was actually a bit famous because supposedly they could go up 1 floor a day.
So yeah, I've always heard this. Burj al Mur, the tower that they built a floor a day.
Yeah, there's an advert about this.
How funny.
Yeah. But quite badly built because it's
but
only
like
2.5 meters high.
Who wants to live in a rush job?
Oh yeah, this is an office building, right?
Yeah,
so they were thinking about this as the financial district of Beirut as well, so not just the hotel district. So this faction of the Reds kind of goes up the Burj al Mur, and of course there's no elevator, so you can imagine them like hoisting up all their weapons, going up, and they realize that they have an incredible sniper viewpoint. And they proceed to terrorize everybody, actually, because of this power. The Blues immediately need to respond. They actually go to Rizq, which is really far away. Yeah. Like, there's no... it shows you, like, there's no real comprehension of the scale of the city. And then they decide to do the more risky thing, and a couple of them go to the Holiday Inn. They pretend they're buying cigarettes, and they invade the Holiday Inn. They take about 200 hostages because it's like a functioning
This
hotel.
Is in 75.
This is October 75. And not only do they take the Holiday Inn, which is in itself this gargantuous building that has all the amenities you would ever want.
Yeah.
They also take over the other hotels north of the Holiday Inn to kind of protect it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how the Battle of the Hotels starts.
Yeah. And did they always stay in the custody of the originators who took it? Did the colors ever switch?
Eventually, yes. That's how the battle kind of moves through. At some point, there are ceasefires between brackets, quote unquote ceasefires, where the army is like, "Oh, we're stepping in," or the internal security forces are like, "Oh, there's a ceasefire, we're stepping in." But yeah.
Okay, I want to play the first track from the album, or maybe before I play it. When did you start working on the album itself? When did it go from an intellectual exercise, like an intellectual mandated exercise for graduation requirements, into an emotional exercise, and then into a creative musical exercise?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I had an existential crisis, as one does after writing a thesis that changes your life and makes you kind of discover the city that you've always thought you knew, but didn't know anything about, actually.
Okay, so it changed your life.
Yeah.
People throw that sentence around a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I had an ushasaj and it changed my life. Right? Like, people say that a lot.
Yeah.
Did it change your life for the better?
I want to say...
Your face is saying no.
I want to say it made me understand things better. And I think, knowledge is definitely a double-edged sword, but it's also valuable. And you can't live in denial.
Yeah, because there are just some things like you can't unknow.
Some things you can't unknow. So, for example, Black Saturday. I had no clue about it.
Okay, tell us about what's Black Saturday.
So, Black Saturday is a massacre that happened near Beit al-Kataib. Markaz Azraq is the song and the album that describes that massacre. So, was initiated not by the Blues themselves, but actually by a father who was associated to the Blues, but who had lost his first son 2 months before. He was killed on the Zahle Tarshish road. He believes it was an identity killing. But he got news of his killing 2 months before. And that morning, he got news that his second son was killed in a car bomb by the Reds. And so this guy kind of goes crazy. And he instigates a massacre of 300 Muslims on identity cards in an hour and a half.
Oh my God.
And no one could stop him. No one. Not even like the actual blue leaders that were at Beit Kataib that day. He was just uncontrollable. And he took with him some young blues who also did this massacre with him. But it all happened so quickly. And it kind of jump-started the Civil War again, because everyone thought the Civil War was this 2-year...
What year was it?
So this was December. So like October was the beginning of the Battle of Hotels. 2 months later, December 6, 1975, was Black Saturday. So everyone thought things were calming down again, you know. And you know, there could be a resolution to this conflict that had started like maybe 7-8 months before, but it just kind of increased this need for revenge and this need for violence. And retaliation, I think, became the name of the game. They do this, we do that. They do this, we do that. So that was Black Saturday. I found that out. I was in the studio, so we work in studios.
Yeah.
Architecture school. And it was maybe like 11 p.m. and I cried my eyes out alone in the studio in the middle of New York City, thinking about Beirut, December 1975. And then I remember this poor classmate of mine came into the studio. He was like, "What's wrong?"
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to you.
Yeah. His biggest problem is like Netflix isn't working.
I don't know how
Jeez.
to explain what I'm feeling. Is it it feels like a history that is a part of us, but no one told us about it, but we feel it in our bones.
Did it change how you felt about who you were? Like now all of a sudden it's almost like you find out like that somebody in your family committed some crazy crime and that like that DNA is inside you too and that maybe you're capable of these things.
Human nature, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think everything I do, and I think a lot of artists also feel this way, is that we do what we do to understand human nature and to kind of empathize and to understand the human condition and to show people that you're not alone in what you feel. And actually, the way I wrote this song was I wrote لا أعتقد أنني أحسست بعنف كهذا. I do not think I've ever felt such violence. That's how I started writing that song in particular, and remembering a moment of violence in my life and in my own personal life that I started thinking about, is this what this person felt? Is it this kind of violence that wants to kill?
Yeah.
And it's a very disturbing thought, but yeah, I think as an artist, this is what I always strive to do. The song evolved into the building thinking or saying,
yeah,
I do not think I've ever felt such violence. There is a man screaming in my corridors. There is a man screaming in my hallways.
It's almost like the buildings, I almost feel like you have sympathy for the buildings. Like they themselves have been almost like raped and pillaged.
Yes.
Is that is actually how you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the point of view. So when you I decided to adopt this point of view.
Yeah.
And so this is the point of view that I am now expressing.
Yeah.
This is the shoes I'm putting myself into, the foundations.
Yeah.
I'm putting myself into.
Let's listen to is the
this song that
Markaz Ahmad the first one?
Markaz Azraq.
Oh, okay. Markaz Azraq, was that the first one you wrote? That's like how you moved into it being a musical project? What's the first one?
Oh my gosh. The first one I wrote ever for that song is Etel.
Okay, let's start with that. This is the first track of the project.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna play a little bit, and we'll edit this into the clips. Wow. How does it feel to listen to these things when you listen to them? Is it emotional at all to listen to
I
them?
remember the studio. I remember working with Yumna. I remember the process of them a lot. And I remember that very specific moment when we sat down at the studio, and it was December 2019. So after the revolution had just started. And actually, I wrote that song quite long before that, maybe like a year before that, year and a half. But it only really came to life when I worked with Yumna Salba on it. And we had a kind of workshop session together, and we just started thinking. She started asking me questions about the types of space I was conveying. How would someone express silence with vocal melody? How can you even express silence? Like, what does that even mean? What are the spaces we're trying to reach? And I think working with her on this very first song really started the course of this album. It wasn't until I met with her that it all started sonically.
Yeah.
And then we went to the studio, and Fadi Tabbal, my producer and the co-writer of this album, actually kind of finally maybe was starting to be convinced that, she has something there that might be interesting.
It's interesting, the idea of silence being something that you're trying to optimize, because the period that you're describing and the emotion that you're describing is so abundantly violent, and silence is not typically something that's
maximized. The first 4 songs of the album, this is the first song of the album, are actually a kind of walk in the present day Beirut, thinking about the past and the dahaliz of the past and the dynamics of the past, while being in an empty city. It's a kind of a city of empty skyscrapers that kind of terrify me. And this is the silence that I was trying to convey. من يسكن هنا لا أحد يسكن هنا مدينتي رهينة ناطحات السحاب. My city is hostage of skyscrapers.
And almost like the skyscrapers are a hostage of the past that like raped and pillaged them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this song, this if you want this part A of the album, which I call the Haliz, was inspired, I think, by living in New York City and realizing that you're kind of in the middle of skyscraper town, and we tried to reproduce that in Beirut at many points in our history, actually. But it was an empty prosperity, that it was an empty symbol of wealth. So this first 4 songs kind of go back and forth between a present day walk, carrying an old map that you don't understand.
Yeah. Okay, I want to play the second, which is a YouTube video that you released 5 months ago. I'm going to turn it around so the camera can see it. So tell us about the video and how you chose to release and why you chose certain songs. And
I felt that Baynana was kind of the song that expresses this feeling that I have overall about the city. And I think looking at a map and realizing that things have changed so much, and that is a violent transformation, I think is what I wanted to convey as like a first impression. And the maps kind of, and that this is a historical, this is a project that uses references, Marjaa, maps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you if you were to describe Beirut in one word, let's say you're wherever you are in the world, you're on tour. Somebody says, "Oh, cool, there are albums about Beirut in a way. You must have a strong relationship to the place." What is Beirut like? How would you describe this place in one or two or three words?
Oof. That's very difficult. I think addictive, and maybe I don't like that word. I think it's a city that has it all, and that the diversity of it is ever wonderful. Like, I feel like the freedom here to be whoever you are is amazing. And this is a freedom that I don't really feel anywhere else. I don't know. This is a difficult question.
Yeah, it's a difficult question.
Mikey.
Okay, so you want me to tell you my word?
Yeah.
I'll tell you my word. My word is intoxicating.
It's similar to the addictive
It's
thing.
similar to addictive because it's like there's so much stimulating, but it's also toxic. There's a toxicity that is alluring at times, but unquestionably deadly at other times, you know?
You know what I'm gonna say?
Yeah.
Scrap all of it. It's mine.
Nice.
It's mine. Because anywhere else I went, I didn't really feel that my voice had any meaning or kind of use or agency or kind of like, what's the purpose of me working somewhere else? What's the purpose of me living somewhere else? There is a meaning to our belonging here that I don't feel that I can have anywhere else.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, did this increase or decrease over time as you were working on this project? Like such a deeply
increase for sure.
Yeah, why?
You know when you tell someone your secrets? خلاص, they're stuck with you.
Yeah.
So when you kind of...
Who told whose secrets? Did Beirut tell you its secrets?
Yeah. It's stuck with me now. I feel that there's an intimacy in research. And especially that now I have continued being a researcher, an urban researcher, in my career after university, and having come back to Beirut in 2018 and having lived everything Beirut has lived through.
Yeah.
In my own way, of course. Each one of us has their own kind of set of privileges and difficulties and challenges and opportunities. But to have lived some of the most difficult years puts you at a kind of خوش بوش مع المدينة. يعني خلص إنه
There's like a deep familiarity.
There's a deep familiarity. There's a deep knowledge of what happens with the city if this disaster happens. Okay, now I know.
Yeah.
Oh, not only do I know, I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much do you think people around you know about what happened during the Civil War? And how much do you think people want to know?
My generation?
Yeah, let's start with our generation.
Our generation doesn't know a lot. They depends as well if your parents have spoken to you about it or not. Depends what point of view your parents have when they spoke about it to you. But the nitty-gritty detail, I don't think a lot of people have watched that Al Jazeera documentary.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the one I'm talking about.
I don't know which one.
There's this incredible Al Jazeera documentary, which is a huge reference actually in my thesis. It's on YouTube, all of it. It's like maybe 10 parts. All of the Civil War, all of the political parties speaking like one by one, refuting each other's claims. It's an incredible piece of, it's an incredible document. So I don't think a lot of people know. And I feel like people don't see the value in knowing. Yeah. Especially my generation. Like, I feel like we're much more interested in figuring out our futures. Like, you don't necessarily think that your history is important to know in order to figure out your future. Yeah. But
it's interesting. So as
I beg to differ.
Yeah, and I beg to differ too, obviously. Like, things rhyme. So, okay, so you mentioned 2019. Yeah. I had a very specific reaction to October 2019, which was unlike the sort of what I thought was the mainstream reaction. But as time has gone by, I've realized that it wasn't a monolith, and that there was a lot of diversity and a lot of different strands in what looked like this single expression. How did you feel in 2019? El Sábado?
That Friday. So it was a Thursday night on the 17th, right?
Yeah.
We heard things were happening.
Yeah, the WhatsApp tax.
Yeah. The next day, we skipped work and we went down. And I have never felt that feeling my whole life. Elation. Like, absolute. I see the horizon of who we could be as a people. I had a abolish sectarian
sign. Yeah.
And people were like, yeah, I
agree.
I agree. And he's like, yeah, I'm usually with that political party, but in case we're saying abolish it for everybody, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like, you're from a political party? I've never spoken to someone from your political party.
Yeah.
So I think it wasn't a bubble. I think the first few days kind of burst all the bubbles. Yeah. Of socioeconomic, political parties, religious. Everyone was down there. Yeah. But then kind of.
Yeah. So, so let's talk a little bit about the later years and what happened afterwards. So like, what happened from 1976 to 1990?
Oh.
What did these buildings, what were they like for the other 14 years?
So the end of the Battle of the Hotels resulted in the rift that separated East Beirut to West Beirut. Because as a retaliation to that massacre that I was just talking about, to Black Saturday, the Reds decided to, instead of doing another massacre in retaliation, to do a military offensive on the hotel district. And actually, it's recorded that George Howie, the leader of the Communist Party at the time, took a map of Beirut and drew a line between the port and Martyr Square and said this will be connected to Damascus Road. And this is how the city is going to split. So this was a military strategy. And in order to achieve this military strategy, the hotels needed to be red, to become red. And everything east of the Beit al-Katayib, where the massacre happened, needed to become blue. And this way we separate from each other. And the center is the dangerous part, but there will be no longer this kind of residential attacks. This is theoretical.
Yeah.
So this is actually what ended up happening. And the Reds kind of invaded all the hotels. They tried to invade the Holiday Inn so bad. They tried for several months.
Yeah.
And then in March they were able to, and it split the city in half. East Beirut became East Beirut. West Beirut became West Beirut. People were displaced from their homes. People moved to East Beirut and to West Beirut. ضاع الناس في أحياء الآخرين. People became lost in other people's neighborhoods. Like, this is what I...
Yeah. Okay.
I want to describe it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said that.
Irth is the last song that kind of describes what we have inherited.
Let's listen to it, and then I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So the question I wanted to ask you is on Ruptured Records Bandcamp, which people can buy this album, they can buy the art print, they can buy the vinyl, it's amazing what you guys have set up on Bandcamp.
Shout out to Ziad Naufal.
Yeah, shout out to Ruptured Records.
And Fadi Tambal.
There's one last line in the description. Do you know what it is? Do you know for sure what I'm about to ask?
I think so.
Yeah. So the last line in the description is, to the families of victims and disappeared then and now. Why did you write that? And why then and now?
There are people who are still affected by what happened in the Civil War, and not just psychologically and through trauma, but they have lost loved ones. And the current political system and the post-Ta'if system, which is just the same, has so much impunity and has forgiven itself all of its crimes, so much so that they refuse to tell these people where their loved ones are. Where have they been buried? Have they been buried at all? So I wanted to dedicate this album to them. And of course, having lived Beirut post-explosion, this is also a new set of families who had loved ones killed due to negligence and with impunity as well. So yeah, I think there's this crazy present talks to the past, talks to the present situation when you're living in Beirut, because we just couldn't get rid of these guys. They just recycled themselves. And until we keep being part of that recycling, we'll never get justice.
Yeah, they just like keep on spawning.
They keep on spawning.
Yeah.
And they don't owe anything they don't owe anybody anything.
Yeah.
They commit crimes, they forgive themselves.
Yeah.
Just like they build projects, huge projects at the storage city, and they legislate them.
Yeah. When you drive around, going back to the original question, when you drive around Beirut and you see something like Burj Al Mur or something like Holiday Inn, what is your feeling? Are you one of the people who say, yeah, we could tear this down and just get this out of our face? It's such an eyesore. It's disgusting. It's ugly. Or do you have a different feeling?
As a preservationist, I don't really care about the beauty of buildings. Personally, I'm that kind of preservationist. What I do care is what significant events these buildings have lived through. Yeah. So if this is a building that has been through a significant event in our history, it is worth preserving. In which form this preservation happens, this is up to debate.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of times it's not up to us. It's up to the person who will pour their money into this project.
But if you could snap your fingers.
If I could snap my fingers.
And have any plan for either of those two buildings that are so prominent and so... their prominence almost makes them invisible. Yeah. So what would you do to make them not invisible, but also serve a purpose that you would like them to serve?
When I was in architecture school, I turned the Holiday Inn into a hospital. Because they actually replaced the hospital. There was a Saint Charles hospital there.
Really?
Yeah. هناك مستشفى هنا ولكنني لا أرى. هناك فندق هنا يملأ السماء. We just watched that.
Yeah.
I feel like my album has a lot of cryptic message.
It does, but I mean, that's fine.
So, yeah, when I was in architecture school, I turned it into a hospital. A kind of program that everyone has access to.
What a beautiful idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. A public hospital.
A public hospital. And that you would actually make amends to what happened to your city by kind of healing people. But I also, when I was in grad school, I kind of created this... there are these marble slabs on each of the balconies of the Holiday Inn. I don't know if you remember, actually, since you went inside. So you remember there are these concrete, like it's almost like a bar at the edge, at the balcony. It looks like a T right now when you look at it. Yeah. And there's a marble slab on each one of these T's. So I carved information about the Battle of the Hotel on a marble slab as a kind of prototype when I was in grad school. So in a way, do anything you want. Don't except destroying it, of course, but also just talk about it. Talk about it in whatever project you're doing. Yeah. This building was part of this kind of history. We need to talk about it. This is the bare minimum. like if you don't if you don't want to go as poetic as turning it into a hospital.
Yeah. Do you have any plans for Burj Al Mur?
Man, Burj Al Mur, the floor to ceiling height is 2.5 meters. You can't do anything with that.
A kindergarten. It should be a huge kindergarten for young kids.
Maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah. Jeez. Interesting. Okay, so what are you working on now? Like what is next for this album and this project? What is next for other stuff that you're working on?
For this album, I'm working on a tour. We're going on tour in April and May. I have 2 excellent musicians with me, Julia Sabra and Pascal Semerjian. We have 7 dates all around Europe, which is exciting. I'm also working with Eli Dager on some background visuals for the performances.
Yeah. That are unrelated to the stuff that you're putting up on YouTube.
They are related, actually.
Oh, they are
So
related.
did you see the most recent
video?
video?
I think we should watch that too.
Sure.
There's 2 other videos. The most recent came out 7 days ago. Let's watch that.
So I'm working with Eli on some background graphics that could kind of give more context to the performance.
Cool.
And that's how it's been working out, actually, in performances where people don't understand the language, is that I tell the story as well.
All right, let's watch this.
يختبئ أزرق في جسدي يعزف الآلات يشرب النبيذ واقفا في المصعد متكئا على الصواريخ من يجزرون في العشرين من كانون الثاني كيف
تفوت من بيت تطلع من بيت تقصر على المراكز هون. هلا الهجوم صار علينا الهجوم كله من هون. صار في حصروا الهوليداي طلعوا عليه من تحت هن من الفينيسيا طلعوا علينا من زناد الزباط كان هون كان كله شبيك طلعوا علينا من الشبيك يعني.
When were those interviews done?
This is Eli's final project when he was studying in the UK. He also did his final project on the Holiday Inn.
Really?
Yeah.
Say a bit, Hick.
Complete coincidence. I met him Bathota.
Okay.
And I love his work.
Yeah.
I had seen Waves 98 a while ago and was like, oh my God, who is this person?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And I met him, Bathota, and I was like, what if I have a coffee with this guy and kind of describe to him this project? And he was like, you're kidding, right?
Have you read my thesis? Have you seen my thesis? Yeah. Crazy. You know, it struck me watching that now that I very rarely think, when I think about the people who lived through the war, I almost very rarely think about so many of the men who actually were like shooting these guns.
Yeah.
And in some ways, like those buildings, their lives were also taken hostage.
Oh, for sure.
You know?
I mean, the video starts with, I didn't tell my parents I was going to the battle. I told them I was going to school. This guy was a teenager.
Yeah.
It's the same person who speaks at the end of the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why, like, them making amends at the end of the... It doesn't really make sense. They were pawns, you know? In this larger picture of we have to retaliate, we have to win, we have to draw the borders.
Yeah.
Other than the military-industrial complex that was feeding us weapons...
Artillery,
artillery.
Yeah.
So this could keep going, and it kept going for 15 years because it was profitable to some.
Yeah. So basically, the entire album is going to become this visual experience that is you have to sort of behold in person.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, as a live performance.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. What do you have any dates set?
For the visuals?
For the tour.
For the tour, yeah. All the dates are out so far. Starts April 20th, I believe.
Yeah.
Austria, Germany, Brussels, the UK, we have a date there.
Yeah.
Prague, Bratislava.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so people can find out about on your Instagram, on your website, Bandcamp. Cool. Mayssa, this was incredible.
Thank you.
Really very hard to to sort of come down from this? I can't imagine it must be easy for you to to be like bathing in this music as you're putting together the tour and getting and rehearsing and.
It's my life's work.
But صعبة. It's tough.
I feel like it gives me purpose.
Yeah. How does your family like it?
So
what do they think about all this work?
interesting question. My mom kind of went crazy when I told her I needed to come back to Beirut. She's like, just stay in the States.
Yeah,
like, you have a job. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I think I need to do this. She's like, okay.
But
and so I spent like 5 years kind of crafting this album with the studio, with Fadi, with everybody involved. Shout out to everyone on the album involved. And with the graphic designers involved. And then she watched the first show. And she was like, oh, now I understand.
Yeah.
It was a real victory moment for me. Yeah.
Does she also have this, we don't talk about this feeling?
Ooh, I feel like it's more like we don't know enough about this. My mom was born in 1962. She was a teenager when the war started.
Yeah.
So kind of her teenage years were robbed from her. And she couldn't go to... She had to stop studying at AUB because it was too dangerous to kind of cross the road. So she ended up going to LAU where her grandmother lived close by. So she kind of dropped. So her life kind of changed because of it.
Wait a second, hold on.
Yeah.
Let me repeat what you just said.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know the topography, LAU and AUB are like 5 minutes walk from each other. So it's literally, which road could she not cross?
It was actually too dangerous to just in general.
Like, which road was it that's like, you're on this side of the road, you go to LAU, you're on this side of the road, you go to AUB?
I feel like she couldn't get dorms.
Okay.
Because her parents were in Saida.
Okay.
So it was really difficult to get into dorms at AUB, and so she decided to kind of to move to LAU, and then she got married really early on. Like her whole life was transformed by الأحداث.
Yeah.
In ways that we don't really think about, and all our parents are like that.
Yeah.
And we take it for granted that they're like that because they had these choices that they took, but actually no, a lot of times these weren't choices.
Yeah,
they were really forced to do what they did because of some circumstance that occurred because of the war.
Yeah.
And dig deep, I mean, and you will find it.
Yeah, or dig shallow and you'll find
just sit with them
for 1 minute.
Ask them like, what exactly happened in this phase of your life, and they will tell you snippets because no one has the big picture. These are oral histories.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't know the big picture. So
Okay, Mayssa, this was super, super deep and very enriching. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It got really emotional really fast, actually. Didn't expect that. Thank you.
So you can find more information at Mayssa Jallad on Instagram or online. Go check out the album. Thanks so much.
Thank you.